seconds.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah.
Gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and today is Monday, May the 2nd, 2022, and we got a heck of a show coming at you. This is another rendition of OTP's Weekend Review with Stu. So in just a few moments, I will be joined by none other than Steward Baylor Jr., who you may have seen in the headlines or on the social interwebs about his return to racing that happened this past weekend. We talked about him going into the race weekend last week. Now we get to talk about how the race went, what is going on, and I'm excited for you all to hear it. So stick around for in just a few moments. We'll get into that conversation. Before we get started, I want to let everybody know I'm up to something. I can't share all the details yet, but I am up to something. It is officially up to something season. Everything is panning out. We're still working on details. I've been working on it over the past several weeks, but it is officially up to something season. I can't wait to fill you guys in on the details as more comes about, but just know that within, I'd say, the next week to 2 weeks, there's going to be some very big announcements coming out of the OTP camp. So can't wait to bring you all into the loop and let you know what is going on. I want to share the news right now. I want to throw it all out there, but we can't quite yet. But I think you're going to be very excited by it because I am very excited by it. We got a lot to talk about this weekend. A few different races went on. There was a National Enduro in Virginia. There was a National Hare and Hound out west. But myself, I was in the Mid-East. And that is the Mid-East Hare Scramble Series. So shout out to the Mid-East Hare Scrambles. If you've been watching the show or listening to the show for a while, then you know that basically my background, the series, my local series, my hometown series, the series I won a championship in, the series I've been racing longer than any other series, the Mid-East Hare Scrambles. It's one that's, I would say, near and dear to my heart. It's where my whole racing, it's really what jump-started everything. Like this whole thing, the podcast, getting involved with the GNCCs, getting involved with Full Gas, racing in general, buying dirt bikes, riding dirt bikes. It kind of all revolves around the Mid-East series. So this past weekend, I was ready to go up to the National Enduro. I was going to bring my camera and shoot some stuff, kind of cover it, get some content going. And I ended up getting a call late last minute that the normal announcer for Mid-East, Terry Reeves, I guess he was a little bit under the weather, had some sickness going on. So Bjorn Hamrick, he runs that series over there. He gave me a call, asked if I could come out and announce for him. So without hesitation, I said, heck yeah, that'd be all, everything coming full circle. I've been racing that series for so long, and it was cool to go back out there with a mic in my hand because I look at myself and I look at my racing career and I look at how much everything has changed and how far I've come in a relatively short amount of time. And so to be back there with a mic and hearing my voice throughout the whole place, it was just it was a surreal feeling. It was a cool feeling. And I've done all sorts of stuff for all sorts of series, but this was definitely a cool one, definitely a very memorable weekend. And I was excited to get that phone call, and I was excited to go out there and get on the mic and announce my first ever hare scramble. So I've been in the booth at GNCCs a lot, and I don't know, it's just a different, I've announced many, many races, and that's why I was telling people, it's like, I don't remember the last time I was nervous to announce a race. I would jump on any stage tomorrow in front of 10,000 people, not even think twice. And for some reason, I had a little bit of nerves going into going into the weekend, especially once I got on the mic and everything got going. And by the time for the first quad race, because I was there Saturday and Sunday, I can't tell you how many times I've walked up and down my hallway doing my very best Rodney Tomlin impression that I could think of. Just exactly like, I don't know, just walking around my house, just giving the old 10 seconds. That wasn't a very good one, but you get the point. That was my first time saying it on a microphone or to an audience in front of people, so it was a little bit weird, it was a little bit surreal, but it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun over the weekend. There was some good racing that went on over the weekend. Mason Simmons, one of the Aussies. This is his first year over here from Australia. He got a little bit banged up to start the season off, but he's making a lot of strides into getting back healthy. I think he is a guy that we will see battling for XC2 podiums. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that quite yet because he's been dealing with injuries and coming back from them. But he came out, raced the Middies Hare Scramble, ended up taking the overall win by quite a hefty margin, and it was some dusty conditions, so I figured he'd be tough to catch if he got out in front early, and that is exactly what he did. Michael DeLosa rides basically by himself to a second place finish, so a good gap between second and third as well. And then rounding out the overall podium for the pro bike race down at the Middies Hare Scrambles, it was Nate Davis who ended up grabbing that third and final podium spot. But a lot of good racing. It was cool to be out there, be a part of the action. It was cool to hear from so many people. There was a lot of people that came up to me that I didn't necessarily know or hadn't necessarily met before that recognized my voice or recognized my shirt or whatever it was. And, hey, are you the podcast guy? And I was like, yeah, I'm Tyler. I do the show. And they're like, oh, we listen every single week. So it was really cool. A series that means so much to me and a series that I've spent so much time racing at. This allowed me to meet a lot of the people that listen to the show and that might not even have recognized me or knew that I raced the series in the past. So it was just a really, really cool experience, really cool weekend. It was cool to hear from so many people talking about how I was announcing, and I don't know. I don't want to pat myself on the back, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. It was a weekend that made me feel good, and I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was cool. It really came full circle, like I said. So thank you everyone that came up and talked to me, chatted with me, gave me compliments, talked about the show. It was a lot of fun to be there and a lot of fun to hear that feedback, and it really meant a lot. And yeah, it was just a good weekend. I did talk to a mom on Saturday that she saw my shirt. I was sitting there looking at the results and everything, and she said, oh, we love that podcast. And I was like, oh, thanks. And she's like, oh, is that you? And I said, yeah, I'm the one that does it. She's like, oh, my daughter. She said that her daughter raced youth bikes or peewee bikes, and said that her daughter listened to all of them, so they listened to all of them. And it was just really cool. She mentioned about grabbing a picture together, but I never ended up finding out who the rider was. So if y'all are listening right now, thank you. Appreciate it. I really appreciate the support, and it's kind of surreal to me how big the podcast has grown, and just kind of talking to some other riders and talking to parents and talking to fans and talking to amateur riders, pro riders. It's pretty cool, the kind of the niche that this podcast fills in the off-road world. Never would have expected it to get to this point, but couldn't be more grateful that it is. So before we get into the rest of the results here and some racing that went on over the weekend, first, as always, want to give a big thank you to Beta Motorcycles, as they are the official manufacturer of On the Pipe podcast. Beta Motorcycles has been family owned and operated since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro, trials, and dual sport motorcycles that are known for their premium quality and rideability. Beta Motorcycles are the best looking bikes on the market, and they back it up with their superior performance. Head over to betausa.com for more information on their available models and to find a dealer near you to get yours today. I had my Beta down there with me at Middies. Didn't really get a chance to ride it around a whole lot, but definitely used it as a pit bike, getting back and forth and getting all around. And I get a ton of questions about that bike, so it's really cool. I like it. Rides really good. Getting the suspension all dialed in. Finally getting to the point where I can really ride like I want to ride. So The better that this leg gets and the less pain that it is to ride, the better I get to ride that thing. So really having fun learning the bike and also getting back into shape to ride the bike. So big thanks to Beta Motorcycles. And I'm happy to answer any questions about them. So if you see me out and about and got any questions about a Beta, let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer what I can about it. But we mentioned out west there was a National Hare and Hound that went on. So before we get diving too deep into these results, want to give a big shout out to Taylor Robert. Taylor Robert is a rider that is in need of your T's and P's, as we like to say around here. Taylor Robert leading the race early on, ended up having a big gnarly crash. From what he said, there was a ditch that was kind of covered in tumbleweeds, and out west, them fellas are flying. So he goes through the ditch, not sure how he crashed, just know that he hit a ditch at a high rate of speed. Ended up with some internal bleeding that had to be rushed into surgery right away to get that handled and get it under control, and also ended up with a broken foot. So bummer to hear that. Taylor Roberts, one of those heavy hitters out there, and this is also going to play into the ISDE. Taylor Robert, he is one of 2 Americans to ever overall the ISDE. So I don't know where the state of the ISDE is for this year or where the state of selecting our team is, but no doubt Taylor Robert had to have been in that conversation as one of the only 2 riders to ever overall it. So maybe old Caleb Russell will be getting a phone call. Been racing these GNCCs and training and riding a little bit. Might need him for Captain America responsibilities, but that is purely speculation. I have no idea what's going to end up happening with that, but did want to go ahead and mention Taylor Robert, let him know that we are thinking about him and hope everything heals up on his end. But taking the win in the center of the box at the National Hare and Hounds, it was Dalton Sheary. So he got his first podium of the season this was round 4 of the National Hare and Hound. They were in Jericho, Utah. So he guessed first podium of the season. I guess it's not a bad spot to be in the middle of the podium. So Dalton grabs that win there. And on either side of him on that podium, guess who it was? You guessed it, a couple of betas. So 2 betas up there on the podium, which was really cool. Joe Wasson ended up finishing in 2nd place overall. Joe Wasson, he is the reigning and defending National Hare and Hound champion. If you remember last year when he wrapped up that title, AMA Off-Road Racing Manager Eric Kudla was out there at that race handing out the number 1 plates, and he was able to pull Joe Wasson aside and chat with him, and we put that interview on the show. So still need to get Joe on the show. He told me that he'd be willing to come on anytime, so I don't know, maybe that's a good OTP Tuesday candidate. But Joe Wasson puts his factory beta on the podium in that 2nd place spot, and Zane Roberts, who ends up in 3rd place overall, is also a beta rider. So 2 betas on the podiums out west. That is definitely a really cool sight to see. And then we look at our women's pro class out there for the National Hare and Hound. Brittany Gallegos grabbed her 2nd win of the season, so she ended up in the center of the box raising the big trophy there, with Tara Geiger in the 2nd place position, and I think it was Ava Silvestri that ended up in 3rd place. So your women's pros in the National Hare and Hound, Brittany Gallegos, however you say it. I'm sorry. I gotta learn the West Coast stuff. I'm trying. I'm putting forth my best effort. I think I pronounced everyone's name out there wrong, so I apologize, but I'm learning. I'm trying. Tara Geiger gets the 2nd place spot, and then Ava Silvestri rounds out that overall podium. So the other out here on the East Coast, that's AMA National on the West Coast. We had an AMA National out here on the East Coast. Before we dive into those results, I want to let you guys know this episode is also brought to you in part by Zach Tussle at Raymond James Financial. Zach is a racer and a financial advisor that helps his client win when it comes to retirement and financial planning. If you or someone you know wants to save and invest for their future or is already retired and needs advice during retirement, Zach Tussle is always my first recommendation. Check out more, or find out more, rather, by Googling Zach Tussle or at their website, Financial Advisors, DenverNC.com. He actually told me someone flagged him down in the woods yesterday and at the National Enduro and asked him about it. So, Zach, good guy, super fast guy. He was out there racing the A class this weekend. So, he was on the show a few weeks ago. If you didn't hear that one, I recommend you go and listen to it. It was a really fun conversation, and we're happy to have Zach on board. So make sure if you are, or anyone you know for that matter, is looking for advice on financial planning or retirement, check out Zach Tussle. He'll get you all dialed in. Now we move to the National Enduro. A name that has been on everyone's radar and everyone's mind this year is Ben Kelly. He's gone 5 for 5 at the GNCCs, on the verge of history at the GNCCs. If he wins this weekend, that will be 6 in a row, which ties a GNCC all-time record for consecutive wins. So that is on the GNCC side of things. At the Sumter National Enduro, the season opener, Ben Kelly did not have the race that he was looking for. He rebounds from that and grabs the win in Virginia this weekend. So Ben Kelly takes home the number 1 spot and the big trophy at the National Enduro, followed by Grant Baylor. Grant Baylor seems to be the one to beat at this Dragon's Back National Enduro. He won it last year. He grabs second place this year, and then Ryder Lafferty ends the day in the final podium position in third place, and that is going to be good enough to give him a tie for the overall points lead, and he is tied with none other than Stu Baylor. So we talked to him a little bit about that here in a minute coming up, as well as his race. Josh Toth was the guy in between them in that number 4 spot. Ben Nelko laying down the hammer, getting it done. He ends up going almost perfect on the day as far as test times are concerned. He grabs the Pro 2 overall win. And, I mean, I'm not going to say that it is because there's OTP stickers on his bike, but I'm just going to say that, like, he put a sticker on there and won the next race. I don't think it's a coincidence. You might think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence. You put on gold wheels, got the gold wheels, broke them back out, and an OTP sticker, and rode his way to a victory in that Pro 2 class. I'm just saying. Could be a little bit more correlation than you would expect. But nah, super pumped for Ben Nelko as he goes out there, grabs that Pro 2 win, followed by Brody Johnson in the number 2 spot, and Will Sievenpiper rounds out that Pro 2 class. So awesome to see those battles going on. Definitely ripping out there. Definitely a lot of competition, especially when you're not battling each other, you're battling against the clock. And if you go through and look at the results and look at the timing, these times are so close. It's crazy how close they are, especially not seeing your competition. You're not chasing anybody down physically. You're not pacing them. You're not looking at their lines. You're kind of going about your own race and then checking the time clock at the end of the day. So it's cool to see how fast they're pushing and how fast all these classes are, and then look at the time comparison between them at the end of a 6-test day. As we look to our women's pro class, Rachel Archer gets back in the win column. So she goes out there, grabs a National Enduro victory, followed by reigning and defending champion Mackenzie Tricker. Ends the day in that second place spot, and Brooke Cosner rides her way to a women's pro class podium on the day. So some battles going back and forth in that women's pro class, but Rachel Archer takes the win, Mackenzie Tricker in second place, and Brooke Cosner in third. Yeah, so there's a GNCC this weekend. We're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow on OTP Tuesday. Don't want to delay it any more than I need to here. We're about to be joined by none other than Steward Baylor Jr. to hear how his race went. And I can't wait to let you guys know what I'm up to. It's exciting. And no, it's not just the whole YouTube video thing, because that thing it's still happening. We got that working. Like I said, I just want to have it polished and dialed before we go live with it, but this is much bigger than that. It's killing me to not say it, but I want to have all my ducks in a row before I say it. So just stay tuned with On the Pipe podcast, and stay tuned with OTP's weekend review with Stu, because maybe that has something to do with the big news. It's I don't know. I'll stop talking about it now, but I'm excited. You should be excited too. You don't know why you're excited yet, but when you find out why you should be excited, you'll definitely be excited. With that being said, want to give a big thanks to our buddies over at Armored Graphics. Went out to Armored Graphics last week, helped them out in the shop a little bit, hung out for a little bit, got some stickers made. They're making some t-shirts now, so we've had some orders coming in on the website for t-shirts, and unfortunately I've had to reach out to those folks and let them know supply chain issues are really getting into us, but just talked with them earlier today. We got the shirts. They're going to be printed hot off the press and going out into the mail, so super stoked on that. Pumped that you guys keep putting in orders for t-shirts. If you see me at a race, I'll have t-shirts with me, so if you want your own OTP t-shirt, flag me down at a race. You can order them online. We should have more of them this week. And appreciate everyone's support. Appreciate you representing. Appreciate Armor Graphics for printing them things. But Armor Graphics is your number one source for graphics, whether it's moto or off-road. You can check them out, armoredgraphics.com, or on the socials at Armored Graphics. Top-notch work, top-notch product, top-notch quality, and they're the best-looking graphics that you can get. And even better than that, you can save 20% off your order by using promo code OTP20 when you place an order for your Armored Graphics. With no further delay, let's get this thing rolling. So we're going to get things going here in this week's edition of OTP Weekends Review with Stu. Joining us now, Steward Baylor getting 5th place on the weekend. I know you got to be happy about it in some ways. I know you're not completely happy with it. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, obviously, I want to do better than 5th always. But at the same time, it was a really good weekend given the circumstances.
Yeah, and so that was one thing. So I went down to Mid-East and ended up announcing down there all weekend. But a lot of people kept asking me, like, oh, how do you think he's going to do? What do you think? And I was like, first of all, he's not going up there to do one test and pull off, especially because you had been riding. And, I mean, I know it's kind of hard to go in there with expectations, but you kind of set the goal at 7th. So you did better than 7th, but you did mention possibly getting on the podium. And, I mean, it's got to feel good given the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really, really close to a podium with my riding. Just needed to limit a few more mistakes and have a little bit more management on my behalf, and I think that was some of the mistakes that I had. So, overall, I felt like I had a 70-80% of the day was a podium ride. It was just that other 30% that kind of bit me in the ass.
Yeah, well, I mean, so just to put that in perspective, the difference between you and a podium was 40 seconds. And when you went up there, kind of going into the first test, you end up getting 8th place in class. Walk me through the difference between after the first test, there's an 8th, and then your second test, you're 2nd place overall. So what was the thoughts after test 1 and then after test 2?
It was as weird as it sounds. It's a conversation I've had quite a bit in the last couple of weeks about this race. People asked if I get cleared that week of, will I be ready to race? And it goes back to kind of, what I've been telling, my dad and a few other people. I said, if you stop doing your job tomorrow, would you be able to do it 6 months from now? Absolutely. I mean, if somebody stops running a dozer tomorrow or framing a hack tomorrow, back out 6 months from now, he's going to be able to pick up his job and do his job. Will he be efficient as he was if he were to do it every day? Probably not. Can he maintain and still get the job done? Absolutely. So, to me,
it sounds like you keep dropping out. I don't know if you walk far away from the Wi-Fi or what, but I kind of missed the last part that you said there.
I'll go to the front. I'll go to the front of the house. I gotta be outside because we got Cocoa Melon blasting, which I said we'd never do, and a pissed off kid if I turn it off. So,
No, I completely understand.
I walk back around. Don't you start with me, boy.
But
Don't
yeah,
give me that look.
kind of like you mentioned, there's no replacement for seat time, and not just seat time, any profession. I mean, you stop doing anything for almost 3 months, you're going to take a second to get back into that transition. But yeah, like I said, you cut out there for a second. What were you saying there?
Yeah, so, I mean, just like any profession, if you stop doing whatever it is you do tomorrow for 3 months, 6 months, 2 months, whatever it may be, you're going to be able to come back and pick it up. Whether you'll be as good, as sharp as if you were to do it every single day, probably not. It's the method, if you're a house framer and you've got a method to doing it and you haven't done it every single day, you pick it back up, there's going to be little changes where you're just not in routine. And it's no different. I feel like at my level, I've spent so many days, hours, weeks, months on a motorcycle that it is a job. And when I drop it, it's not like I'm a kid anymore coming back. And when you see a younger rider try to come back from an injury, a lot of times, one of two things will happen. They either come back right where they left off, just riding on natural talent, or they come back and really struggle to figure out why and what they were doing prior. With an older rider, I feel like as long as you don't overthink it, injury is just basically time off the bike, and we know what we have to do when we line back up. We know if we're capable. When I rode the first day back on the bike, I knew I was capable of running the same pace that I did in round one this year. I also paid attention to a variety of things: my heart rate, my recovery between motos, my lap times, and what pace I needed to ride to try to maintain a good, solid pace. And to round back into why I rode Test 2 better, Test 1 I was terrified. I was...
Rightfully so.
There were some fast sections, there were some inside lines. I was scared to get off the track. I was scared to cut a corner. And half National Enduro racing is reading the arrows far out, and there is no National Enduro rider, and I'm saying a National Enduro rider, not just somebody who comes from GNCC that's forced into the series, but a true Enduro rider who's done it for a few years, which I think most of the guys on the line now have definitely ridden Enduros for quite a few years now, even though some of them not necessarily in the last couple of years, but they did it 10 years ago. So if you ask any of the guys in the pro class, if we're off the track more than 25 feet, if they say no, they're lying like hell. National Enduro is pick up the track as early as you can and straighten it out as much as you can. After my injury, I was pretty nervous to get off the track and ride the edges, ride the leaves where you can't see what's there. Test two, a guy looked at me and he said, how'd that one go? And I didn't know, we had no times, but I was the first rider through, so I stayed there with my stopwatch and just paid attention to when the guys were coming through, and I realized I got beat by about 30 seconds by my brother, and I was like, fuck, that's bad. Like, that's a less than 20-minute test. I got beat by 30 seconds, and it was an open test. Like, that should not be the case. Guy looks over at me and goes, well, it's your job. You'll figure it out. And it just took me back to my conversation that I've had with quite a few people over the last few weeks. My job. I know what I'm doing. There's a reason I've got the big number 1 on my back. I'm the best at my job. And it may sound arrogant, but that's what I've got to tell myself at the end of the day. And I lined up for Test 2 as a different rider. I lined up for Test 2 knowing what I had done during the week, knowing how I prepared for that event, knowing that I was far from absolutely prepared, but also knowing that I was only a step away from where I normally was. And basically, I had done lap times, and in a tight enduro technical trail, dodging trees. My enduro loop that I always ride right before I leave out for an enduro, and my fastest lap time on a dry day prior to entry was a 2:58. My fastest lap time day one on the motorcycle was a 2:58. So I hadn't forgotten my body, my mind, nothing had forgotten what I needed to do. The problem was lap 3. When I got about the 9-minute mark, I would blow myself out, and I realized I've got to back down to manage to where my fitness doesn't go completely away. So I went and I tried a few different things. I tried riding at 80%, and at 80%, I was doing 302, 302, 302. At 100%, 90, what I would call National Enduro pace, 98%, 99%, as fast as you can go, but manage it for 20 minutes. I would do a 2:58, a 3, a 3:02, a 3:04, a 3:06, and it started climbing. Basically my heart rate got too high. I couldn't maintain where I was, and I don't have enough conditioning to stay where I needed to. And if I rode at 90%, I could click off 3 minute, 3 minute, 3 minute, 3 minute the whole way. And I knew that I was, basically a second, less than a second off per minute of my absolute best time. And I haven't done the math, but I would say that at the end of the day, I was a second or less per minute off of the fast time. And I knew that going in, and that's just where I had to ride. Now, it's tough because when you get beat or you're fighting for position, you want to line up. And I did it in quite a few of the tests. I just blew myself up too early. I would get 10 minutes in, and I was smoked. Last 10 minutes, I was running like a squid. Test 1, I sucked. Test 2 and 3 were good. Test 4, I crashed right at the end. And after that, it was just a snowball effect. I crashed, and I gave up a position to Toth, and I needed that position to stay in the points lead, and it was on my mind, and I was riding like a rookie and making rookie mistakes, and got to where I was changing things on the bike to try to compensate for it. And test 5, I rode really, really good. Got in a little tangle with a lapper, and as if the wind wasn't already out of my tails, I just took it out that much more. And I knew after that test, it was like, shit, that was the time that I needed to get back to 4th place and possibly be in striking distance of the podium. And test 5, I tried everything I could, and again, just test 6, sorry, I just blew myself out. But overall, it was a good day. But from a racer standpoint, I just did the wrong things at the wrong times, and I know what I did, and I know where I need to be. Was it a good day? Absolutely. Was it the day I was expecting? Not quite. I say I was shooting for a top 7, but I've come back to a podium before and felt like I was more than capable. I just, made mistakes, but that's never been one of my strongest races, so I'm happy to walk away and still have the points leader be tied with it.
Yeah, and I obviously want to get into that as well, but so you actually crashed, you went down. What happened in that crash? I mean, how bad was it? What happened?
I had a few. One was just with a lapper. Test 5, I tangled up with a lapper on a little hill climb. He caught an angled root, pushed his front end into me, and took both of us down. And it's just kind of shit luck. But test 4 was completely misjudgment. Late in test 4, test 4 was like a really slippery turn track, and basically what I ride day in and day out is turn track. I'm really, really good in back and forth turns, place where you don't have to fully stand up into braking bumps. You're just slightly adjusting back, left, right. Second gear, like that's my shit, and I knew it was, and I knew I was riding really well. And probably a mile and a half from the finish was coming out of a left-hander, and it was really slippery. I saw a log coming out of the exit. shifted my weight back, pulled my head back, released the clutch to get the front end up. The front end didn't come up. Basically clipped the front, pushed my bike off the side of the track, spun around backwards. Me scrambling to get up instead of taking a breath and cool down. It's as weird as it sounds, I count seconds when I'm down on the ground. So I count. The second I hit the ground, I know 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I'm sitting there and I'm counting. I know exactly
like a boxing referee.
It's as weird as it sounds. It's just something that I've always done. It's that National Enduro side taking over, so that at the end of the day, how much did I truly give up? Would I have still won that test? I'm sitting there and I'm trying to scramble to pick my bike up. I'm trying to hit my starter, and my starter button on that bike is further inside than my practice bike, and I wasn't paying attention, and I'm just smashing the handlebar, and I finally looked down, and I gave up 12 or 13 seconds, but then the next thing is, it's something that I shouldn't do because I know better, is you get up off the ground, and you're like, I just lost 12 seconds. I've got to make up 12 seconds. And that's not the case at all. Usually, if you know you're riding good, just ride good. Keep doing what you're doing. Know your marks. Forget about everything else. Ride your race. I let that crash get in my head, and I really just basically tanked myself in that last mile of that section, trying to get back after it. And it was the worst thing that I could have done, and kind of, like I said, snowball from there. But Test 5 was okay, and that was the only reason Test 5 looked good on the results. It was a 5-miler, so I didn't have enough time to blow myself out, basically. It was 12, 13 minutes. But still tangled with a lapper, and that was kind of the tell of the tape there this weekend. Just, stupid mental slip-ups by me, and a lot of it, like I said, it's just not doing it, not being on the job for so long, and I can sit here and talk about it and preach it to somebody else, but when you're out there in the heat of the moment, it changes things completely.
Man, this is going to be one of those foot in my mouth situations, and it's hard for me to have a different take on this because this is your job, this is your livelihood. I'm just a guy sitting here talking on a microphone, but it sounds like you're looking at a lot of the negatives and looking at the bad parts of the day and things you could have done differently, when I think the majority of the world is seeing you ride with a broken neck 10 weeks after and still get a top 5. And you can kind of go through the results and count the other amount of guys that do this for a living, that have been doing it for a living for the last 10 weeks, and you beat them 10 weeks off the bike not riding because you had a broken neck. So I think there are a lot of positives to take out of this situation. You're still tied with the points lead. You still have the number 1 plate. But, I mean, it's that drive, exactly what you're talking about right now. This is why you've got those 5 number 1 plates, is because even on what everybody else sees as a good day, you're finding the negatives. So just on my behalf, I can't imagine the position that you're in, but I just want to say congratulations and good job, because to stay in that points battle and to keep this championship dreams alive, given everything that happens, I think is awesome. But transitioning from that, how's the neck feel? Was there any pain? Was it more like in the back of your head knowing what could happen if you crashed, or is there actually physical pain that you're still dealing with? Tell us a little bit about that and the injury and how it's feeling.
So, a little backstory to kind of tie this question in. Fractures, usually you don't see them very well until they start to heal.
The fuzzies.
And we were far from aware of all of the damage that was done. So I had what we thought was just a pedicle fracture. It was broken in 3 places, and with it being broken in 3 places, it wraps around your artery. So it was possible that it would shift and snag an artery. So that was why it was so scary. But that's what we thought it was. The pedicle's non-weight bearing. It's not directly in the center of your spine, yada, yada, yada. Turns out, after the next CT scan, I get my surgeon Tanner to look at it, and he goes, yeah, there's a lateral mass fracture, a lamina fracture, and the pedicle fracture. Like, you've got pretty much your entire vertebrae is broken. And, you read on a pedicle fracture, oh, you're good in 8 weeks. 3 to 6 months minimal before physical therapy. So,
Oh my god.
My surgeon, my neurosurgeon, who I was having go through the spine and everything, had scheduled me to come in just at the 3-month mark, which would be like this week or next week. I told the receptionist a little white lie. I said, "Hey, I'm out of town on vacation for those next 2 weeks. There's just no way that I can make that. Any way you can schedule it prior to then." And she's like, "Well, he said he wants to see you in 6 weeks, and that'll only be 3.5. But I'll see. Let me see if we've got any time." And I'm like, "That would be great. I just, I want to get back in here because I want to make sure everything's good. It's a scary injury." And she's like, "Oh no, I understand it." So she schedules me for the Thursday before this race. My CT scan had to come prior to that, so I got it last Friday, or the Friday prior. And I called up there and I said, "Hey, that vacation I was going to take it. I'm actually leaving Wednesday. Is there any way you guys can see me Tuesday?" She said, "Oh yeah, I'll work you in. No problem." So another little white lie to get me on the bike a little sooner, just in case. Meanwhile, I'm talking to Randy and everybody and my mechanic, and I'm like, most likely I'm not racing, and the only reason that I'm doing this on Tuesday is because most likely I'm not racing. He's not going to clear me, and we're going to go shoot the World Championship bow fishing out at the Bass Pro Shops World Championship bow fishing. My mechanic, we had already decided, like, we've never had this weekend off. We're going to go check it out. We may suck at it, but we did a tournament the prior weekend, almost won the damn thing. So it would be like, and really in retrospect, it would be like winning an NCHSA and deciding that you wanted to line up for Red Bud. Like, we probably would have been screwed. But that was our plan. We wanted to go do it. There's a lot of people that try. There's a lot of people that try to go race GNCCs and just don't do it just because they're good at a local. They had one good race. They think they're ready for it. We were those people. It was cool, but so I wanted the answer by Tuesday because to win that tournament, we had to go out and scout for the fish, figure out where the big fish are.
Yeah.
So I get my answer early, and he's like, he walks in the room. He goes, "So how do you feel?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I feel okay." He goes, "Yeah, I see you took yourself out of your neck brace." And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a pedicle fracture the whole time, and I read enough to know that it was not weight bearing, and I took myself out of my neck brace a couple weeks ago. Actually, I took it off the week prior when I watched Ben Kelly dominate at Coker, and I was just like, I was just over it. Like, I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I'd been to the point where I wasn't doing, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't train. Like, I've never had an injury where I could not train. And I've read enough on the pedicle. I was like, you know what? I'm good to start training. I'm taking myself out. I'm going to start my own physical therapy. It's crazy. I mean, I'm always that guy. It sounds stupid, but I did my research. I thought I was okay. So I take myself out of my neck brace, lose my neck brace. Of course, I wanted to wear it to the doctor's appointment so I looked like I was obeying, but I couldn't find a damn thing. Don't know where. And he goes, "Well, I gotta say, it actually looks really good. How's your motion?" And I'm like, "Well, I self-diagnosed myself. I've been doing PT." And he goes, "So how's your motion?" I'm like, "I can take my chin to my chest. I can look as far up as I can. I can look 90 degrees left, 90 degrees right, and I can do circles on my head." And he goes, "That's impressive. So do you think you're ready to ride?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've been waiting to fucking ride for 11 weeks, 10 weeks. And he's like, "Well, did you bring your gear with you? Did you bring your bike? Have you got a place to ride on the way home?" And I'm like, instantly, I was so excited I was ready to cry. So,
like a kid on Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've never had an injury that completely sidelined me. I mean, an ACL, they tell you to go home and try to pedal, try to walk. You don't need crutches in week one. A clavicle, I mean, I can still do, like, a clavicle. I get plated and I'm racing that next week. Shoulders, I mean, it's straight to rehab. Like every broken bone, every injury I've ever had, I've been able to stay active. This injury, especially for the first 6 weeks, I mean, I wasn't just sidelined. I was completely out. Like, you're not allowed to touch your toes. You're not allowed to stretch. You're not allowed to move your shoulders. You're not allowed to look left and right. You're not allowed to look up and down. You're not allowed to pedal. You're not allowed to walk. You're not allowed to run. You're not allowed to
drive.
I mean, it was like anything. Like, you can't drive. I didn't drive for 7 weeks. I mean, it was the worst injury. So it was, stone cold nothing for so long. When I got back on the bike, it was quite a rude awakening, compared to any time prior. It was much different. But, with all that being said, a lot of people have asked, were you actually cleared? I was actually cleared to ride. That's legit.
Yeah, Steward Baylor Jr. told me I could.
Was I cleared to the PT a few weeks earlier? No. But did I? Absolutely. So Surgeon Stu, he's at it again. My cousin also just raced this weekend with a fucking air boot on. Like,
did he? I saw him on a bike. He didn't race like that, did he?
Yes, he did, dude. That guy had his leg was bent at a 90 degree. I watched it. His leg was at a 90. He's got rods and plates all in it. 3 or 4 weeks old. He's even got bone bridging at this point. Like, this guy's out here, and all I can say is nothing, because my dumbass did the same thing. Like, I can't say anything to him. I'm like, God, what an idiot. And then I'm like, wait, I can't say that. Yeah, that's my boy.
Dude, I just saw the brief video of him. I didn't know that he raced. It looks like he just put gear on to damn ride around the parking lot. I didn't know he raced.
He lined up to get points so that he could stay in the points for the local series that our track is involved with Eddie Ray and Jessica Patterson's track. So he just wants to get the championship, and then further out than that, he's trying to line up for regionals because he qualified this year, and he's supposed to get cleared the week of regionals, but I already told him about the vacation tip to get him a second week of riding.
Oh man, just get the doctor's appointment moved up, be all right.
Yeah.
So a pain standpoint, is there pain? Is there stiffness?
Sorry, yeah. So my PT my self-diagnosed PT led me to no pain or stiffness. The only thing that was stiff while I was racing, like, shit. Took you a second, didn't it?
Yeah, that one went over my head for a minute.
No, everything felt really good. It was the little things, like when you don't ride for a while, your hands get tight, your forearms are tight, everything's just not in its natural state. Like, I haven't put enough time back on the bike to get to where it just feels natural again. And I was definitely like cramping up in the forearms. Not necessarily. I don't really get arm pump. I've had a lot of wrist surgery, so I don't squeeze tight enough for arm pump, but I cramp up. My fingers cramp and little things like that when I'm off the bike for a while. Blistering started, so if anything, that was the only discomfort that I really felt today. It was just minor shit compared to what I kind of expected. But it was a good day. Like, I mean, looking from the outside, it was definitely a good day. But from my standpoint, it's like that little podcast where the guy said, do you see Michael Jordan out responding to people's Instagram stories saying good job, or giving compliments, or giving feedback, or on his bad days, do you hear him tell somebody, it was at the positives on the weekend. And it's not that I'm a negative person. I'm definitely not a negative person. It's in my point in my position, I have to be a negative person. I have to be the guy that finds the negatives because I need to figure out how to turn my negatives to positives. I can't be the guy that says, you know what, it was a good day. And, you know, I know there's a lot of racers, a lot of riders, especially kids of the new era, in other words, pussies, who want to look at the positives. And they want to be told the positives.
Hey, what'd you call me? No, I'm just kidding.
But, you know, at the end of the day, if all you hear is that you're the greatest, then it is a rude awakening on days when you get beat. And it is a rude awakening on any day that somebody tells you or proves to you that you aren't the best. For me, I don't want to hear that I'm the best. I can look back, and obviously I've had a phenomenal career. And, you know, on any day last year, I felt like I was definitely the best racer. But I didn't need to tell myself that, and I didn't want anybody to tell me that. For me, I needed to know that there was more that I could do, and there was something, you know, there was something, someone better. And, you know, to me, like, I'm not going to focus on the positives of the weekend, not because I'm not a positive person, but because those positives don't matter. What matters to me is what kept me away from the podium. I mean, realistically, I don't even know, like, I would say that a 5th place is my worst result in 4 years of National Enduro. I mean, 40 races, a top 5, like, sounds great, but I would have to look back. But I know in the last, you know, since 2020, so 2020, 2021, and 2022 seasons, I know for sure that is 100% my absolute worst finish. And probably beyond that, I just, you know, I'm not happy there. And I know it was, you know, from somebody looking from the outside in, it sounds like a great result given the circumstances. But to me, it really isn't. So I have to know the negatives to turn them to positives. And, you know, that's a big thing. You know, everybody that wants to congratulate and wants to tell me it was great, like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, it is good. And from the outside, I'm fine with it. Am I happy with it? No. Am I okay with it? Am I gonna sleep tonight? Absolutely. I've been there before. I've been much worse before. But I don't think in the last probably 7 years by round 2, I was in 2nd place or worse. You know, obviously I got to look at this as, even though I'm tied, I'm technically 2nd place. And not only that, we have got a crowd within 7 points. I think 7 points back is Toth now. And in that little group, you've got my brother, Toth, Ryder, Kelly, and myself. That's tight. Like, that's really tight racing. The way that the results changed from round 1 to round 2 really flipped, and it tightened things up pretty drastically.
Yeah. So, I mean, judging off of that, no more sympathy, man. Why'd you suck so bad this weekend? 5th, dude? That's all you got for real?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so I'm looking at 2019. I went second, first. 2018, I went 1, 3, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. So we're 5 years back. 2017, I went 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, 4, 1, 1, 1. 6 years back. 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, 4, 1, 1, 1.
Hey, man, you should You should be a salesman. You done convinced me. You sold me. When I look at the results, it just says 5th place. It doesn't say anything about a broken neck, man. What the hell are you thinking?
My last race in a National Enduro out of the top 5 was 2016. So this is my worst race in the last 6 years. So to me, this is my job. I can't settle for that.
So the mental strength and the mental side of the sport is something that is a reoccurring theme on the show. And I know we've kind of been watching people and observing from the outside, but now you're back in the mix. So from a mental standpoint, everything that you're saying now, and this is kind of a 2-part question. You're looking through your results. You're going all the way back to 2016, saying this is the worst finish, looking at things that you could have done differently. Obviously, you go out there and prove that you can still ride. I mean, you almost won a test, 2nd place in a test. How do you use this as motivation going into the next round? So how do you use all this to apply to your mental strength, for one? But before that, how did you push through everything this weekend? So you said in the first test, you're a little bit worried about the neck. You always got that in the back of your mind. But at some point, you made that decision to go for it. And, hey, we're here. We're in it. Let's go for it. What was the mental state like before the first test and then, like, halfway through the day? Was there a change in the mentality going into it versus halfway through it? Or were you kind of even keel the whole day?
No, I mean, it definitely changed after test 1. Test 1, I was scared. Test 2, I decided that, I literally... I said to myself, I said, there's a reason I have this big fucking number 1 in the center of my back, because I'm the best guy here. And again, not to sound cocky by any means, but you have to have that mentality. I have to line up knowing that I am the best guy there, whether I'm 5th, whether I'm 7th, whether I'm 8th at the time. I have to know that I'm the best guy there. And that is what I had to know for me to move forward to the second test. The rest of the day, I don't think I struggled with mental strength. What I struggled with was mental control, if you will. Knowing when my body wasn't going to take anymore and pushing it just a little bit past that, which is normal. But when you're as out of shape as I am with no seat time, it's not good. So I was putting myself in a position to where I was losing more time than I gained by blowing myself out. And, the mental strength side, I've come back from a lot of injuries. I had this discussion with a guy last week. He said, if I ran a team and I had to hire any one rider, it would be you. Not because of your social media, not because of anything else, but because if you look back, you've had how many surgeries since you were 17? And I said, I don't know, like 11, 12. He said, you've sat out one season, and not even an entire season, but one season kept you out of points in the top 10 of whatever class you were in since you were pro in the last 12 years, 13 years. And I said, yep. And he said, that to me shows that if I was going to put my money on somebody, and if I had to put my money on somebody, I'd put it on you, because I know that you are not going to quit no matter what it takes. So my mental state has always been fine. I mean, not to toot my own horn, I'm bulletproof. I'm numb to it. I can push through whatever. I've had a bumpy home life. We lived in a camper to chase this shit when I was a kid. Like nobody knows the stuff that we had to go through to get to where we are when everybody's out. And, everybody loves to talk a little bit of shit, especially when you're on top. And, we see it regularly. I mean, even to now, I would say that, of the guys now, like I have a really solid home life, but, it didn't start here. I can promise it didn't start here. My family, all the way back to my grandparents, sacrificed everything they could to get here. And I know that, and I line up. It doesn't matter if it is not for one fucking penny. I'm going to line up as if it's my last race. So on that side, as far as the mental strength goes, there's nobody that's going to beat me there. the part that I've struggled with in my career is exactly what I struggle with this weekend, and it's overriding my mental strength and turning it to another side of mental strength, and actually paying attention and thinking, what do you have to do to win, not how much can you give to win. So moving forward, for Missouri, that's where I'm going to have to keep my mind focused is what do I need to do to win, not what can I give to win. Because I'll give 100% every single time. Now, I just have to figure out exactly when I need to get that 100.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but all this stuff that you keep talking about, it sounds like the neck injury in the back of your mind after the first test wasn't really there. It sounds like your limiting factor was just the physicalness of riding, of racing, from not being on the bike and not training for so long. Is that correct?
I would say that that's going to be the majority of it. Now, granted, tests 4 and 6 had a lot of hotlines. And in the back of my mind, I was still a little bit timid to get off the track and ride something in the leaves. So, when you're talking to pro lines, 33 is the hardest road to be on. Now, granted, I've had that hot seat for a lot of my career, and I've learned how to use it. Basically, you got to pick your head up and catch the arrows and charge through the leaves as fast as if it was a normal track. Because after I lay tracks down, the guy behind me is going to hit that same line, and the guy behind him is going to hit the same one.
And just
75 feet off the track, but we're all going to see it. When we see that orange arrow sticking out, we're all going to cut that corner. We're all going to go after that extra couple seconds.
And a disclaimer real quick, I don't want to get right in the middle, but for everyone listening to this that haven't been to a National Enduro or haven't ridden one of the trails, after being a part of it last year and setting some of them up, that stuff does not get looked at. That stuff does not get checked. There is absolutely no idea what's under those leaves. The course is marked, and that's it.
And there is no, I mean, you're talking like not and to back up what you said, it's not a negative statement that you said.
Not at all.
It's just truth, because you're talking 60 miles. You can't police where a rider's going to go, where every rider's going to go, every 900 riders or whatever we had at Sumter, 1,100. You can't police where every single guy is going to go over a 60-mile course. So that being said, there is a technique to blindly bush hogging. You're going to hit a tree. Make sure it's smaller than your forearm and hit it in your radiator. And I say radiator loosely because actually what happens is you hit it on the inside of your bark buster and your radiator kind of folds it down, but your bark buster hits it first and hopefully it rips the roots up. If not, you and the tree are both going down. If you're small, you're probably not going to take the tree down, but motherfucker, I'll uproot them. So there's that, and that's tip number 1. Number 2 is hit your brakes on the entry of the line and try to keep your front end light the entire way. That way, if you hit something, your front end doesn't stop. You try to kind of catapult over top of it and hope that the shock doesn't kick up enough to throw you over the bars to break the neck. So that's all the enduro secrets I'm giving out for the day. I've given enough. I watched some videos, looked at some pictures of Ryder this weekend, who I really discredited in the last episode because I did not think that he would be a force to be reckoned with, if you remember. And he is. He's proven himself. Little fucker. I looked at a lot of photos and videos this weekend. He is working on a technique that I taught him, and he's actually using it in his racing, and I don't like seeing it now because now he's a competitor. Damn it, I should have kept my mouth shut, and I shouldn't have never told him of that technique, but he's using it against me now. But, yeah, I mean, it's tough because in the Enduros, you don't know what is coming, and you know that you have to shave every second. So, that's the tough part. Like I said, for me, it was test 4 and 6 with a lot of inside lines. I just didn't feel comfortable running because those two tests, it was in the leaves. It was tough to read, and I haven't been doing it since I broke my neck. I haven't got off the track since I broke my neck. I haven't been on the track, much less got off it. So that was definitely the tougher ones for me.
Yeah, and so I want to go back real quick and just to reiterate on what you said. When I said that there's no telling what's in that, I did not mean that in a negative way whatsoever. I think the clubs do a really good job of laying the trail out, but you go to enough of these races and you start to realize that the lines that you see are way different than the lines that any normal human person sees. And that's with
the guys that are laying these events out do not have a clue what I'm going to pick up on.
Yeah.
They're looking at a good flowing left, right, left. I'm looking at a straight line.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's kind of what I meant is like you see things, especially when it's a split second. As you mentioned, y'all are all looking for arrows and going towards arrows. So I didn't mean that in a negative way whatsoever. It's just more of a fact of the matter that you can't account for everything that's in the middle of the woods because you're in the middle of the woods. But to touch on the rider situation, we see he's kicked off of bow fishing for a little while. What are we doing here? He's under your roof, and now he's sharing the points lead with you. Are we putting laxatives in his food? Are we starving him? Are you cutting the water off that he can't get any water? There's got to be something going on.
No, he's back up in Pennsylvania, and apparently he thought that I was trying to get in his head this weekend. Is what he told me after the race, and I'm like, but if I was trying to play head games, I'm one of the best. I can promise you wouldn't know. So I don't know what that shit was about. Probably Barry was in his ear saying, "Oh, he's trying to get in your head. Keep your head clear, Ryder." I don't fucking know. But no, I was definitely not trying to get in his head. He's a buddy of mine, so he better get his head in check. Because if he wants to keep saying that, thinking I'm getting his head, I'll get in his damn head. I'll play it. I'll play a good game. Just ask Corey B. About getting in somebody's head. He knows that. We used to play some head games with the rider back in the day, and Corey, I might break Corey out of retirement to get in Ryder's head if he thinks that was all I had. Which I promise, I can dig deep. I can get in his head. But no, poor guy. Ryder's been riding really well. God, it just sounds really weird saying rider. He's been riding really well. He definitely surprised me. I didn't think that he was going to be that consistent. I kind of expected him to kind of bounce around and maybe back that second up with a seven. He definitely didn't. And, it's good for him. Obviously, he knows how to ride. He's a phenomenal racer. And it's good to see. Like he's definitely a close buddy of mine. But when you're in competition with your close friends, it's tough because you want to be a dickhead to them, but at the same time, I'm not really. I'm good at being a dickhead, but not really to my competition. I don't really have any beef with anybody. I mean, the fans have made some beef with other riders for me, but as a whole, like I feel like I get along with most of the riders pretty well. And I'd love to go. Get in Ryder's head, but not really my thing. I still want somebody on my boat fishing boat after we retire.
Yeah. So, and another thing that we talked about last week and kind of something that you wanted to clear the air on was the whole GNCC situation. We kind of run into a tough stretch right here as far as racing is concerned because every single weekend it's something. I mean, I don't think it's really not that often that there's back-to-back GNCC, National Enduro. And you go out, race, other than the physical side of it, everything feeling good, riding good. Have you made any other changes to your plans for GNCC, or are you still kind of targeting snowshoe?
I'm really not certain. At this point, I would say that I will not be racing until snowshoe. There's a chance I make it back for Ohio, but with Joe Biden's gas prices, and bonuses I get for fifth place, it really doesn't make sense to come back any earlier until I feel like I can get out of fifth place.
You get bonuses for fifth place? What is that?
Yeah, from the series.
Oh.
Yeah, so basically top 3 pays, and until I feel like I am a definite podium threat, it is absolutely pointless for me to come back. I mean, don't want to be out there absolutely, but realistically, financially, is it worth $1,200 in fuel for me to go to Ironman, or whatever they call it?
The Hoosier.
Yeah, the Hoosier, absolutely not. I mean, like I gotta remember that I'm getting 6 miles to the gallon, and it's not looking good. So, yeah, I think we were paying like $6 a gallon, and I'm getting 6 miles a gallon. So, yeah, Hoosier is not one of the trips that I see in my near future. Just simply because it is not a good decision for me to go and piss away money. And again, this is my job. I obviously people are like, that's shitty of him, but I wouldn't expect anybody else to lose money on a job. I don't think fans should expect me to lose money on a job either. So, for me and also for Yamaha, I mean, they're in the same boat. I mean, it costs them a lot of money for me to go and race. So if I'm not competitive, it's not any better for the team. So I think right now the best decision is to sit out and see kind of where we stand in a couple weeks. And maybe I get to the end of the week and I say, you know what, screw it. I love that race. I love that track, which I do. And maybe I'll show up. But at this point, it's not, like I said, not looking good. I think we need to focus on getting a little more prepared and just try to come back to where I'm at least a podium guy. I don't think I'm gonna. A lot of people, a lot of the team and other people, my mechanic, have kind of said, you should wait until you're 100% and ready to come back and win. Sounds great, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit until the end of summer break. I think by the end of summer break, I definitely will be able to win. But the bills don't pay themselves, and my mechanic ain't making my RV payment. So, for me, again, I gotta keep circling back. This is my job. This is my livelihood. So, at the end of the day, I do have to pay attention to that. And, for me, I know that right now I need to get the podium to get the checks coming back in.
It's cool to see you back on the bike in good spirits. It's not the result you wanted this past weekend, obviously, but it's got to feel good to make that step back and to be back in the mix and know you're back on the clock, you're back at the job. And so much of your life has been around racing and dirt bikes, so it's got to be a good feeling to be back in the mix and knowing that we got a race under our belt, there's races on the horizon, and still a championship alive.
Definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, I still love lining up for these things, and I feel like I always will. Even if I'm back fighting for fifth, right now I know that that's not where I should be, so that's why I'm not happy with it. But I think moving forward, I just need to get back on top and get it figured out, and hopefully the next podcast won't be so negative.
No worries. And, man, last thing here, and I'll let you get back to it. And as always, thank you for your time. But I noticed there's some big changes coming to the Shoals. I know y'all are adding a lot of stuff there. I know you're ramping up the training program. We got Loretta's stuff on the future. In the past week, we just saw the announcement that closing down to the public for a little bit, focusing on the training. So it looks like a lot of really good stuff on the horizon and a lot of growth coming out of the Shoals. And I know you're helping a lot of riders out there. And we see it all the time. We see what you're building, as well as your uncle and your family and your cousins and everybody. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity, too, to just fill us in about what's going on at the Shoals. Is there any any other big news we don't know about, and how everything is going at this point, because it looks like a lot of great things coming out of there.
Yeah, I mean, the Shoals was kind of a dream of mine when I was a kid. Or when I first got injured, I guess I was a kid. I was 16, 17 years old doing riding schools, and I always wanted to do something like an MTF or off-road, and the Shoals is kind of that. That's what I want to build, and luckily with my family's support, I was able to get it off the ground, and we've got a great trainer out there that's done some off-road, some moto, more of a moto background, which is really good for the up-and-coming off-road side. Most of us guys, you see what we're doing. We're training on motocrosses, and we also have a good mix of the Loretta style, the technical tracks. We have a good fast outdoor track, but with the full-time addition of Dylan Kalin, who's also owner in the Terrell Gaskets, that's going to hopefully elevate our program. We're doing a little bit of everything, but a lot of people have complained about us doing away with the day-to-day practice, and if somebody wants to come and stay for a month and not be a part of our training program, we're not turning them away. Like, the problem was that we were having is guys would drive up from Georgia, let's say, 2 of them at 12 o'clock during our training group after we had just got done prepping for 25 guys to train on one specific track, and they want to jump in for a $25 ride fee. And these guys are paying $125 a day or $800 a month to do this program. It's not fair to those guys to have these other 2 that did not pay to jump in on that. And we can't afford to prep an entire second track for $50 to show up during the week. So we're not doing away with all public riding. We're still going to have open practices just like every other track, but the funny thing is the people that bitch the most on social media either, number one, did not follow our page to begin with, or have never been to our track. They're just fucking liberals that want to run their chops. If you want to act like that, then stay off of our social media. We don't care. We're trying to build a great facility for people who want to be the best, and liberals never want to be the best. Sorry, throwing it out there. My standpoint, it is what it is. I don't like your presidents. Fuel prices or just taxes. So keep it to yourself. If I'm talking to you, you know who you are. Obviously, I'm not talking to you, Tyler. Sorry, did I just expose your standpoint? You ever exposed it before?
I'm just along for the ride, man.
So yeah, that's where we stand. No, we are a family-run and family-started business, and every penny on that ground has come out of our pockets, and we are trying to make the best racers across the U.S. And obviously, you look back in motocross and supercross when facilities started, everybody started going. If you wanted to make Loretta's, you go to a facility. GNCC hasn't quite taken that twist as it stands, but I see in the near future, obviously with Caleb doing some stuff, SSR working with some off-road riders, Steve Hatch has always kind of had his programs. I think that in the near future, we're going to see the off-road side kind of make that same turn to where if you want to be competitive, you're going to be staying at a training facility, and that's kind of what I built. I wanted to be on the front side of it, and luckily, like I said, I've had a good support with my family getting involved. My aunt and uncle and everybody, everybody that's built it to this point. I think moving forward, I think we're going to see the facilities kind of take off, and hopefully everybody stops by. I mean, this winter was great. We've had a lot of the top GNCC guys that stayed throughout that time, and that's kind of the end goal for me is when racing's going, like training kids and moving into that side of things.
Dang, yeah, I didn't even know that there was all that blowback from people online. I wasn't setting that up at all. I saw it as a good thing. I was like, oh, look at this. It's the training program is taking off. Like that was my first thought when I saw it. So
No, you always got those few people that want to just stir the pot. And like I said, it was people that literally either didn't like the most negative comments were people who, which a lot of them deleted their shit after some of the responses, but it was people who either never followed us to begin with or have never been there.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Why are you on our shit like just trolling? But again, like I said, probably liberals.
Everyone's got to get their opinion out there, but yeah, it's funny. It seems to come from the ones that aren't even supporting it to begin with. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like, I heard, oh well, we can afford to come practice and ride, but we can't afford to do the training. Well, that's great. I can't afford to prep a track for you to show up to practice.
yeah.
Like, how about next time you fill up a tank of diesel at $6 a gallon, and I'll run the equipment, and then you can ride.
Yeah.
But, people don't, nobody ever sees it that way, and nobody ever will. Like, there's, trust me, I did. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, I would message tracks to see. Obviously, when I was a kid, I was one of the top kids, so I would message tracks to see who was going to let me in to ride for free. If they weren't going to let me in to ride for free, I wouldn't ride there. And now I'm looking back, and I'm like, fuck, I am such an asshole. Like, dude, when you're changing tracks and changing plow teeth and putting a Moschio on and just burying yourself behind your own equipment, it's like, man, how do half of these tracks stay open? Like, how have they done what they've done with what they've had over the years? And why would they ever let some dumbass Justin Bieber, some fat Justin Bieber looking punk, go out and ride at their track with this long ass shaggy hair?
That's where all the negative comments came from. It's all the people from 15, 20 years ago saying he was asking me to ride for free.
It probably is. Yeah, I can. I mean, you look back at it and it's like, shit. Why did I should at least tip them people. I mean, they were prepping tracks for me, but yeah, I mean, back then, it didn't matter. Like it was I deserved to ride there, and did I bring a crowd? Absolutely. Every time I showed up, people would come to the track because of it, so it was worth it. I still do the same thing for a lot of our pros, but now that I'm part owner of a track, it's like, damn, I would have never done that. Like, I would have never asked. I would never even asked that question had I known the amount of money that truly goes into it. I mean, people don't realize that every time that equipment starts up for a practice weekend, I mean, during July, we're looking at 20 hours on the water truck, which runs about $100 an hour. If you tag in the fuel we're burning on the pump to get the fuel to the water, or the water to the water truck, the fuel in the water truck, the guy that we're paying to drive it, the other guy filling it with water, and then the amount of fuel it burns. There's $100 an hour on that. There's $50 an hour on every piece of equipment we start up that runs for 15 hours a weekend. I mean, people just do not understand. Like, if we don't, from the outside looking in, people see, oh, you got 100 riders at $30 a head. You made $3,000. Man, what a great weekend! And I'm going, we got 100 riders at $30 a head. Fuck. It doesn't make sense a lot of times. So, but in the end, that's kind of why we transitioned to just training. Like, it's good to have a group of dedicated people. Dedicated people or disciplined people help other people stay disciplined, and that's what we've come to find is keeping a solid group of guys around kind of motivates everybody, and it's been our bread and butter, and that's what we want to stay with, and we're still.
Sweet. Sounds good. Sounds like a lot of good stuff on the horizon down there. So we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled and learn more about that going forward.
I'm telling you right now, aside from the injury, life's been good.
Sounds like it. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time out to catch up with us. It's cool to kind of hear about the weekend and hear how things go. We got a GNCC coming up this weekend, followed by National Enduro again in Missouri, and then the following weekend, GNCC again in Ohio. So a lot of racing on the horizon. Hopefully we can get together and chat a little bit more about stuff going on. But like I said, as always, thanks for your time tonight, man.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. And hopefully we can grow this following from 5 to 6 this week.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
All right, man. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you later on.